to you in PDF file. And as you can see, the webinar will be recorded also for other uses. If you miss some parts and so on, you will be able to recover it later on. Okay. So welcome everybody. This is Ezio Filippi speaking. I'm working for ChemOrbis since many years, looking after the European part of the business. And today we cover a bit the Styrenics part, talking a bit of directives, the regulations for which Europe is, let's say, ahead of other countries, particularly for the recycled and the single-use plastics. We will talk about the implications that the governments have introduced as a plastic tax and so on. And then we'll analyze the real juicy part, which is data, prices, trends, the import-export data, and finally the forecast for 2022 for PS and ABS prices, and derive some conclusions. So who is ChemOrbis? ChemOrbis is a company who provides services for consultancy, market information. We also have a trading platform, and we are operating since 2001 globally. But what, let's say, more people know ChemOrbis about is for the reliability and the timeliness that we report the market trends and prices. And that is because we talk to a lot of customers, to a lot of converters, traders, distributors, and they appreciate all our neutrality policy, which is very, very important when you are in a business like this. So why are the directives made in Europe for plastics? The key objective of all the directives in the last 5 to 10 years are to reduce the impact of plastics in the environment, not only marine littering, but also in the forests, in the general environment. And because of that, I made you an example here of what constitutes the kind of waste that is left on the beaches. And if you weigh 100 kilograms, 17.3 will be made by plastic food containers, 17.1 straws, 9.2 cutlery, and the rest dishes and cups. So nearly half of it is plastics. And not to count the dispersion in the environment, which is known as microplastic, for which the impact is still to be evaluated, and for which we will see later on the European Commission decided that there is no distinction between the normal plastics standard made from the fossils or the biodegradable ones, because we don't know what will be the impact on the environment. For example, the directive made in 2015, number 720, it was related to the plastic bags ban, the shoppers, famous shoppers. The answer of the industry in some countries in Europe was to use, to make the shoppers the biodegradable compostable plastics, which is still used in many countries and still growing as an application. So the industry gave this as a solution. In the last directive, the 2019 one, is basically directed for the single-use plastics. So because we as human beings are not able to, let's say, limit the waste dispersion of plastics particularly, then the politicians come and issue bans and restrictions. And the restriction here is particularly on the single-use plastics, for which wherever there is a replacement available, it has to be used, which is not plastics. There has to be reductions of use of plastic if the alternative is not available. And this law directive has been enforced in July 3rd, 2021. And imagine the guidelines, I mean, the details on how the law is applied have been issued only in May. So it left very few months or even weeks for the industry to prepare of that. And the importance of this directive is that there is no distinction between traditional plastics and biodegradable ones. Biodegradable plastic is considered at the same level as pollutant as the traditional plastics. Part of the directive is compulsory marking on the packaging, particularly helping the consumers how to separate the waste and so on. It has been introduced also the extended producer responsibility, which very highlights the principle of the polluter pays, which in this case is the producer of plastics. So the producers will cover the cost for waste management cleanup, data gathering, and consumer awareness raising. You have seen probably in all your countries there are these kind of initiatives on how to important is plastic, on how to better recycle it, and so on, coming from different bodies, associations, and so on. This is not because they want to do that, but because they are obliged to do that, okay? Because the directive states clearly this consumers awareness raising. As far as the implementation goes in Europe, basically the Commission recommended to introduce a plastic tax, for which it would be 0.8 euro per kilogram for all packaging plastics not recycled. And the aim for this tax is to generate resources for the recovery fund after the COVID pandemic. The government's position is very scattered. Many countries require the revision of the guidelines because they didn't have much time to work through all the detailed implementations, characteristics, and so on. And for example, Italy decided to charge 0.45 euros per kilogram on all single-use plastics by January 2022. And in these days, the government, who is deciding on the next year budget law, is considering to postpone it to 2023. Again, they are afraid that these taxes will hurdle the growth of the economy, okay, creating issues where they shouldn't be. Of course, the directive is still there, so for countries who are not complying to the directive, there will be sanctions because the government commissions in Europe, they want their funds generated by this kind of directive. For example, there's another part of the law that Directive 2019 is related to packaging, is very clear about, is that all plastic might be recyclable by 2030, and you see different percentage are, let's say, forced to, particularly for containers and food and beverages containers, very strict, and probably these objectives will even be revised and further tightened, because the industry, particularly for PET, is ready to do that. And PET is a very nice molecule which allows to use a lot of recycled in the regrinded in the final packaging material. So it's easy and it's there. Maybe not for the other polymers, but basically, just to give you an example, 2018 data, this is official data from Plastics Europe, 29 million tons of plastics were collected, but only 9 recycled. Recycled means mechanical recycle mostly. The rest went to the energy recovery. And there are different solutions because the recycle will become more and more important part of the plastics industry. Because of the pressure from the environment, from the politicians and so on. And there is no easy solution. There is no unique solution. We see example of mechanical recycle polymers, which are based 100% on recycled or variable percentages. Basically, the producer or the compounders make available in a pellet form nice injection or extruder grade that are easily used by converters. And still, this will be the most important part of the solution, the mechanical recycle wherever possible. But then we have seen polymers proposed to the market with the label bio, and where bio means different things, but bio mostly I have learned that it relates to renewable sources. So whenever you have a feedstock that's coming from a renewable source, then you can call it bio, but no laws establish this thing. So it's purely marketing solution, like you can imagine. But even if the fact that many producers don't want to stick to solution related to the supply chain of food, so they want to be aware of that because they don't want to start using a feedstock which is related to food because they may impact the pricing of the food itself, so they don't want that. But think, for example, the impact of the electrical cars. In South America, there are a lot of cars who are going on ethanol, and that ethanol, if it will be all converted, all the cars will be converted to electrical, will become available as a wonderful, let's say, intermediate to make monomers. So in this case, you want to impact probably the food chains. The latest solution, though, provided by the producers is the chemical recycle. It is a closed loop. It is really circular solution, circular economy, which is what the European Commissions also want. And in fact, many plants have been started up, pilot plants, of course, with 10,000 tons per year of capacity, which basically use a plasmix which is not separated by mechanical. It can not be separated mechanically, and this plasmix basically fed into sort of crackers that can produce at the end of the solution either oil to be cracked further down to the standard crackers, or even to gas feed that is possible. So this chemical recycle has a lot of attention by the producers of plastics and petrochemicals because it's a very clean solution, and it will help to use all the plastic that cannot be recycled mechanically, and also clean the environment, basically. Final thing that I want to comment on the solutions and marketing value of these solutions is the certification part. Well, if you look there are a lot of certifying bodies that tells you, yes, I certify that it has so and so percentage of recycled material, that is becoming from renewable sources, that becoming from whatever. The thing is that these certifications are not, let's say, compulsory by anybody, and there is a variety of them. And looking on the main side of one of the certifying bodies, the list of the fake certificate is longer than the list of the good ones. So more has to be done in this direction to provide a uniform environment and legally valid certificates. So what happened in 2020, and what should we look in 2021, 2022? So there is a strong economy recovery in progress, and this is driven by packaging, building and construction. And before it was automotive, now automotive is stopping because of other issues like the microchip lacking and so on. But mostly there is a strong recovery this year, 2021. 2023 will be, let's say, smaller, but still very, very important also for Europe, which traditionally has a very small growth. what characterized this growth of economy was the limited availability of polymers and other materials. Not only polymers are missing the market. Actually, I would say that there are other materials like paper, wood, and metals that are even more critical than polymers. We have seen high logistic and freight costs. I will expand a bit further down on this concept and try to find explanations for the situation. Because of the logistic issues, we as Europe, but also other countries, all the trading was having difficulties. So most regions like Europe, like Asia, some were counting on their local supplier more and more. We have seen the oil increasing, touching above $80 per barrel just recently, still going up, and other raw materials increasing. We have seen polymer prices in the spring of 2021 touching historical highs. And of course, this has a financial impact as well, because for the same amount of volume that a converter has to transform, the price is double, and so it impacts its credit line. And sometimes there were issues, of course. And most recently, we have seen energy prices increases and shortages in China, for example, and other countries. And this is what is driving the oil prices very, very high in these days. But in most recently, some producers introduced, particularly for some energy based production of polymers like PVC, they introduced like an energy surcharge on their prices. It is a real issue. So let's look at the polystyrene Europe import-export, January 2020 to June 2021. As you can see, the yellow is the exports and the blue is the imports. And we can clearly see that by increasing their prices locally, Europe is attracting more imports. In the first half, nearly tripled, basically. Europe in 2020 had prices lower than the rest of the world because the economy crunch, and because of that there was a logistic issue, but also there was a real commercial issue, because if you are exporting, you don't export where you don't get the profit. You export wherever the prices are higher. Same thing for ABS. We have January 2020 to June 2021. This graph here is representing, the line is representing the average import price statistically, so it doesn't tell you much, but you can see clearly the trend. And also here, being the ABS price is higher nowadays in Europe, they start to attract more imports. Although here there is really a global issues for ABS, because Europe is very dependent on imports, and the supply demand for ABS is totally unbalanced, because more than 20% of the demand should be import, but we don't, as Europe, we don't have that available nowadays. Let's see the prices. So we see the same time frame, January 2020 to September, October, beginning of October of 2021. I have reported three regions: Europe, which is the blue line, then Turkey and China import prices. Why Turkey and China? Well, we tend to report this spot market because they create a trend. So whenever the market is a spot market, the modified situation of supply demand is immediately transferred to the prices, and it takes a few weeks more to make that happen in slower markets like Europe one. So if you watch what's happening in China or Turkey, then you may see what could be the trend in Europe in the coming weeks. And you can see that we touch minimums here in May, April, 2020, and highs were touched in Europe in April, May of 2021. In China and Turkey a bit earlier in the year and started to decrease. Same situation graph for ABS, January 2020 to September 2021. And here the same regions. Europe is the blue line, green Turkey, and yellow China. And as you can see, because of the heavily unbalanced situation of supply demand with ABS, after touching the maximum in May in Europe, basically it lost a little the ABS price average, but it stayed on very high levels, so nearly 3,000 euros per ton, whereas in Turkey and China it corrected a little bit, but also stayed at very high levels. Let's see why investigate a bit further why the logistic cost increased. Basically, it's all related to the situation that was caused by the pandemic of COVID-19 in 2020. The immediate reaction of the markets was a slowdown in trading, even blocking the first quarter, second quarter, and so on. And because the ship forwarders needed to stabilize their costs, they reduced immediately the number of ships available for the market. In the end, this caused, because in the second part towards the second part of 2020, we saw already an economy recovery from the stimulus from many governments and so on. The containers available were still fewer, so the spot prices for those increased 3, 4, 5 times and so on. Imports, as I said before, were for typically importing regions like Europe for the polyolefins were strongly affected. So the situation supported also the increase of polymer prices in the regions. We see that the return to normal is unfortunately not yet there, but it might ease the situation in 2022. This graph is explaining why the logistic costs increased from the time frame 2019 January to July 2021. You see, this is courtesy of McKinsey. You see the sailing capacity in terms of containers tonnage available, and you see the various events that took place, like we said, in the economic pandemic here, and for example, the increasing congestion in ports globally in first part of 2021, the Suez Canal issue with the ship that was basically blocking the Suez Canal for a few weeks, and then, for example, the impact of one of the major ports in China because of COVID. Imagine that this port is one of the largest in the world, and because of COVID restrictions, they lock down everything. So all the ships that are there, the containers and everything, they are frozen. So it means the capacity is not there. So what I'm trying to explain here is that the key message of this slide is that basically the prices of the logistic costs increased not only because, or actually in minor terms, they increased not because there was a recovery of demand, which is there, of course, but not as much as the congestion, which reduced imports, which reduced the number of containers available. Many forwarders are just thinking about building new ships, but to build a new ship, it takes 18 months from the day you decide, you put the money, and you get your ship ready. So the thing is, what I'm trying to pass you as a message, that it will take a little bit of time, but it is also interest of the forwarders to go back to normal situation as soon as possible. The other thing is that I would like to mention that is that the prices of logistics that increased a lot were the spot ones. Those who were based on contracts, they didn't, and it is the majority, of course. And we think that the majority of the forwarders in the future, particularly those ones who export and so on, will link their volumes to contract rather than spot. Now, the last part is dedicated to the polymer price forecast. What are we considering for the ChemOrbis model? Basically, we consider two kinds of factors. The medium long term, which are fewer, of course, and those are typically the oil future energy. We use the EIA agency, US agency, as a forecast. We take in account the new capacities. We have planned from here to 3-4 years ahead, and see how they will impact on the availability of polymers month by month. Of course, there is a seasonality and the GDP forecast, which can be broken down into regions or even country level, which are important. And then you have the 1 to 3 month short-term outlook. And for this, of course, there are more factors playing and influencing the supply-demand situation, not the least the theoretical netbacks. I mean, I said you before, the exporters, they take the volumes they have for sale to the markets, providing the best returns, deducted all costs and so on. And therefore, you have the demand expectation, the trust index of consumers, theoretical margins, the monomers, spot prices versus. So you have many factors, but the currency, for example, euros versus dollars. But at a given time, when we analyze over time these several factors, at any given time, so that's why we produce these reports on a monthly basis. At any given month, only 2 or 3 maximum of these factors will play the important role, like the Pareto 80-20 rule. So this is how we designed our model. And this is the result. First, the latest energy forecast. As you can see, this was released a week ago or so by the EIA. And you can see Brent and WTI and natural gas prices from October 21 to October 22. And as you can see, they foresee still a growth, but limited until November only. And it might look very inconsistent. But the thing is, the economy in 2022 will grow, but will grow at a slower pace than 2021. And furthermore, they said in their comments that, and we can say that they foresee that the oil production will outpace the economic growth, particularly from the non-OPEC countries and the other, and US tight oil particularly. And this will influence strongly the prices of the oil. But as you can see, it's not going down below the 60 USD per barrel. So still staying at quite high level, although decreasing. Yeah? And when we talk about Styrenics, we can see that there are new capacities built around the world, mostly in Northeast Asia. And this includes also the styrene. Actually, it's mostly styrene, the monomer, being built. And this helps us to make the supply-demand situation more scientific. So these are new capacities impacting from October onwards. These are the offline capacities. The offline capacities total for a given month is given by the shutdowns plus lower rates of the plants. And as you can see, until October, actually October is the worst situation, and it's divided by regions, where the blue is Northeast Asia, and so on. You can find Europe here in the black. But as you can see, the offline capacities are very important until October, then it's ceasing. And the result is the third graph that I want to show you to give you a bit more of, let's say, confidence. if you take into account the new capacities and the offline capacities, the algebraic sum is this graph here. So starting in November, but definitely more towards the year end and starting in 2022, there will be a positive, so oversupply situation in terms of tons available. And that should also influence the prices of polystyrene, of course. This is the result. Of course, our reports are much more comprehensive. You have reports of 7-8 pages, but this is the very synthetic results. Starting from August, you can see September, October, November 21. The PS resins, we foresee a slow decrease for both GPPS and HIPS, and the same for ABS. But for ABS, as you remember, the situation is heavily imbalanced, so prices are still on the uptrend for until the end of the year, and then they should go down more decisively. Also on the ease of logistic costs and the imports becoming more available. This is related to Europe, of course. This is Europe and this is Europe. Okay. So conclusions. There are a lot of rules that will impact the directives, the taxi, plastic taxes, the single-use plastics, and so on. But until now, I don't see a limitation or an influence, strong influence on the styrenic prices and availability by these new rules. So the styrenic prices that we saw in the last year or two are mostly driven by supply-demand issues. Of course, the new regulation will impact, and because PS is used in a lot of single-use plastics, we will see a decrease of demand there. But PS as such, I was debating a few weeks ago with other, let's say, friends, plastic friends, let's say, that they saw a dramatic decrease in PS use, but in fact, the PS is used in many other applications, like building construction, insulation, thermoforming, and so on. So I don't see risk in there. The PS will still be, PS demand will still be there, my opinion. The spot exotic matter we learned today for a nice benchmark. Many of you knew it by it before, particularly if you are in ChemOrbis environment. And price volatility for Styrenics has been always extremely high, but it will be there also for the future. The reason is that styrene, for example, is one of the few monomers that is used in some cases for financial derivatives and so on. So this is also impacting on the volatility, and the price is strictly related to polystyrene price is strictly related to the styrene price. So with this, I have finished, and I will open. I hope I generated some curiosity, and if you have any comment or question, I will be happy to answer that.
Yes, we already have 2 questions in the chat. The first one is related to the certifications. I don't know the name of the person who asked it. And he said, isn't ISCC the preferred certification body?
It is. And on that side, if you go, there is a long list of fake certificates. But it's fine, because at least they warn their customers there is a problem.
So the other question is from Alain Michel. Do you, probably he means, do you expect a decrease of production styrenics in China due to lockdown energy?
That's a very specific question. Of course, I think that if there are lockdowns of energy related to polymers, it would be not specific to polymers. So I wouldn't say there won't be, because there might be, but I don't think they will be related to polymer specific. So whatever they will shut down for energy saving, it will not be because it is Styrenics. Okay.
Okay, another one from Laura Cerliani. How it will be ruled, the different plastics tax rates in next year EU exchanges?
I don't understand the question. If you can ask.
I think if it's like related to exchanges, I don't know, like
okay.
Parity.
Country. Yes. Okay. But no, I mean, practically, I think, but this will be like the directive issued in 2019 was, let's say, followed by guidelines. There will be a lot of guidelines for the local Italian tax whenever it is implemented. And of course, that will be a matter of inside the market, like for the other duties and so on. What I mean is the tax is for taxpayers in Italy. So if you ever export, it will be exempted. But if you import in Italy as an importer, you should be paying this tax unless you have exemptions or whatever. So that will be easy to be implemented between trade between countries, if that is what she wanted to ask. Because trading is very transparent and trackable and everything. The great part is mostly to when you have consumers applications and the recovery there. That is more difficult.
So another question from Stefan Mikula is, will other producers follow the surcharge premium of Trinseo of PS-SM products? And then how will Asian producers and Turkey producers respond to it?
Well, the first part is certainly yes, for sure. There will be energy surcharges coming from not only Styrenics, but for many other polymers and producers. So and it's a real problem. So producer is trying to let their customer base know that there are issues. So if you want to secure supply and so on, you have to pay a certain amount of price that is covering this kind of extra costs that are not that difficult to be taken care of. What was the second part of the question? Sorry, I forgot.
How will Asian producers and Turkey producers respond to it?
Difficult to say. Difficult. I mean, they should follow because they also pay. Actually, in China, Asia, in Asia and China particularly, and also for Turkey, there are issues for energy. They are oil dependent, so they suffer even more. So if the European producer go for that, they will also follow. That's my opinion, of course, because these things are happening just now. So we just have to monitor.
Yes, and the next question is again, energy crisis happens in China. Why does Trinseo increase price in Europe?
Well, it's partly true, but as I said before during my presentation, energy dependent productions like PVC, which is made by electrolysis of salt and water, sodium chloride, and water. It's quite natural they ask for surcharge because the energy part of the cost of the PVC is very, very important. It can be up to 60% or so of the total cost. For other polymers, is less, but you have to see the oil prices going up. I mean, first thing we see when the oil prices are going up in Europe or anywhere is the fuel for our cars that are increasing immediately. Then when it's starting to go down, the reduction is not so immediate, but this is the case. So the energy crisis you have to see not as missing the feedstock like in China, so they have to cut down, rationalize, and so on their production in some cases, but also as an increasing cost of energy. So it impacts on the prices, and evidently the producer will seek their share of pain to share their share of pain with the customers.
Another question from Mohammed Hatip. Do you see any threat for PS consumption for the account of PET in packaging application?
Yes, that's definitely a risk, product replacement, particularly if PET prices stay low and Styrenics prices, polystyrene prices stay high. Although you have seen that in our forecast, ChemOrbis forecast, the prices in 2022 should be on the weak side, downtrend. Therefore, I don't see particular risk there for product replacement, apart from maybe from the single-use plastics and so on, where PET can be made of recycled products much better than PS. Although also PS is not staying. PS producers and the consumers and so on are very sensitive to this subject. So we will see more of a mechanical recycle in PS coming along and providing a solution. So there will be certain kind of product replacement, but not so dramatic because of pricing and because PS is still a very good molecule to convert, to transform.
Okay, another one from Burku Dilivar. What is your forecast for styrene monomers in 2022? Are you expecting a decrease in styrene monomer contract prices? And if so, to which level?
Well, yes, the answer is yes, because polystyrene and monomer styrene are strictly related. Whereas, for example, we have seen that for polyethylene or polypropylene during this crazy period, the monomer didn't matter anymore. It was supply demand of polymer that mattered. In case of Styrenics, the link is much stronger between polymer and monomer price. So we have foreseen, for example, from the highs of 2,000 euros per ton down to the level of 1,400 euros per ton. So a similar decrease, 30–40% should be seen also in this styrene monomer during 2022. Also because there are a lot of extra capacities built in Asia. Okay, these extra capacities will also help to rebalance the supply-demand situation.
So the last question from the chat. Forecasting the economic will growth in 2022, what will the percentage against 2021? And again, are the producer plan to increase the capacities to resolve the short supply? What are the percentages of increased capacity against 2022?
Well, we have seen, well, first is the GDP. The GDP from different sources will certainly be positive growth for 2022, but it will be smaller, okay? So even, I mean, if you look at the China case, this is a clear example. Somebody even say that China did it on purpose to slow down the economy, okay? So that became more sustainable in the longer term. You cannot grow 10%, 8-10% every year. So this might be a bigger plan, but for the moment, we just see the consequences. For the extra capacities, yes, the wave of capacities also in Styrenics, but also for other polymers is still there. It's coming mostly from Asia, but Asia is a big importer country. So whenever they will start to rely on their local, regional supply of raw materials, including styrene and polystyrene, of course, there will be less imports needed, and those quantities not needed there, they may become available for other regions, provided the logistic costs allow that kind of moving of volumes. Because if you are paying, like nowadays, $600, $700 per ton of transportation, provided you find a container, that's not viable, of course.
Okay, we still have some questions left. One more from Laura Cerliani. The strong dollar will impact the polymer import from North America?
Well, that's something that certainly can impact, of course, but the industry is a spectator there. So there will be something that is less easy for the North America, particularly producers, to move polymers towards Europe and other Mediterranean countries and so on. But think about the fact that for certain polymers, particularly the ethylene-based ones, for which they are fully integrated, they have very, very cheap raw materials. Natural gas is coming very, very cheap, comparable to costs of Saudis. So they can afford to squeeze a bit their margin. So if they want to move tons, provided all the logistics and let's say intention of the availability of extra volume is there, the difference between euros and the strong dollar won't be much of a limitation. It will be just a minor, let's say, shrink of their margins, but their costs are so low that they can afford it. So ethylene base, I mean polyethylene all grades and PVC.
Okay, question from Tammy Wong. Will ChemOrbis collect and share recycled plastic price and share the market update?
That's easy. We started to see this issue since early days. So on ChemOrbis, you have available since January 2015 the recycled grades coming from either post-consumer or post-industry recycle. Of course, you can understand that when you talk about the price index, you have to rely on a constant quality grade that is commonly available in the market. So you don't talk about different qualities and so on. So yeah, they are available. They are available for Europe and for Turkey, and for the main grades. And of course, the more they will become important. For example, we don't track nowadays the recycled polystyrene. But since it will become more important, and more, let's say, players will come to use it, so we have more sources to interview, and we may introduce it in the future also for polystyrene, both post-consumer and post-industry recycled grades for polystyrene. So yes, it's something we issue a monthly report for that, explaining what's happening, the market dynamics and so on, and the index. They are available.
And the last one from Burkulilivar. When do you think that the current high energy costs go back to normal in Q2 2022? And what about the logistics costs from China to Europe?
Well, They are not related, but the energy we rely on the EIA. The EIA has two assumptions. First, that the economy will grow, but will grow on a slower pace in 2022. And second, that the production of oil and natural gas, actually the natural gas grew prices in the chart I showed you, also because the US are exporting a lot of natural gas to different regions, including Europe. But yeah, so these two assumptions, a slower growth of economy and increase in production will lead prices of energy, both oil and gas, down. Think about also the great push there is from the public to move to more sustainable, renewable sources of energy. So the sooner that happens, the better it is for all, for the politicians, for the industry, for the environmental pressure, and so on. So what we see and we share with the EIA view is that the oil prices will go down. But with oil, you have to be ready to be, let's say, not reliable, because anything is so delicate equilibrium that minor tension or new wars or whatever can impact heavily on prices. Okay, so the forecast as of now is start decreasing by the end of this year, and decreasing by the end of this year and going down further. And the second part of the question was, so can you repeat it? It was related to the
what about the logistic costs from China to Europe?
Yeah, China to Europe, that depends really on the congestion of ports. So, and is related to the COVID situation. If the pandemic will find, particularly in China, Western countries, and so on, a solution via the vaccination plans and so on, there will be less congestions in all ports, and what is frozen as a capacity, selling capacity of containers will be released. Plus, we will have the impact of the newly built container ship that will come in line in 2022. So I can see a heavy slowdown in prices of logistics in 2022, including China to Europe, of course.
So in the chat, there is no question. I don't know if someone wants to make a question directly to you.
Very good. So if there are no other questions, I thank you all the participants. So we will send you the presentation. We will share with you the link of the record. And if you have more questions, just you have the contacts, mine and the team of ChemOrbis, your local representatives, and you are welcome to raise whatever comments, questions, and whatever. So thank you very much to all, and be